Good afternoon, New River Valley. I'm Mary Peyton Marble, News Director at wuvt-fm 90.7 Blacksburg, here with Lieutenant Governor candidate John Reid. He's the official Republican nominee for the Commonwealth. Hello, Mr. Reid. How are you today?
I'm great. So glad to be able to talk to you.
I'm so glad to be able to talk to you. This is really exciting for our station, and I'm excited to talk to you. Our listeners may be familiar with your voice already because beginning in 2017, you were the host of WRVA Morning Show in Richmond. In that position, you were able to commentate and voice your opinions on Virginia politics, but also global politics. How has working in radio prepared you for your political journey?
Well, it's been great. I tell you, I really liked radio more than I liked television. You want to know why? Because in TV, you can be the famous, well paid, very well known anchorman, but you're reading a teleprompter. You're reading what someone else has written. And I used to get in kind of heated arguments with the people at the TV station because they wanted to choose certain stories that I might have found questionable, and then they would often ignore stories that I felt were really important to be covered. And then ultimately, as the anchor, you're reading the news copy that somebody else has written. And at the beginning of my career, that might have worked, but then as I got more experience, I became more and more disgruntled with that. So I left television, went to the United States Senate for a while, U.S. Chamber of Commerce, did business work overseas, and then when the offer came for me to host the program in Richmond at one of the oldest news talk stations in the country and one of the most venerable stations, it's 100 years old this year, and everybody who'd been a host of that program had stayed a very long time. I thought, you know what, I should go do this. And then for that 8 years, I got to pick every morning what stories I would cover. I got to talk about my reaction to them. Hopefully, the audience found those to be informed, thoughtful reactions, not just emotional reactions. And I feel really good about the 8 years that I spent there, and I hope I'll have an opportunity in media going forward to continue at least that genre of commentator status.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I love picking and deciding what stories that I want to cover
Yeah.
as working for the radio station here. Being working in news is definitely something that is important, and I've really enjoyed my time here. So, what was your favorite part about working in radio?
I didn't enjoy getting up at 4 in the morning. I will
Yeah,
tell you that. I
yeah,
have a
yeah.
colleague who does the afternoon show, and it's noon. You and I are talking
Yes,
right here
yes,
at noon.
yes.
A noon show would be perfect. You don't have to be
Oh,
up
much
at four
better.
o'clock in the morning. You can kind of digest what's happened during the day and not risk saying something stupid that is discredited at a couple of hours later.
Mhm.
I learned that the hard way.
Oh, yeah,
Sometimes people jumped on me and said, "Well, you're not talking about such and such issue," and I said, "Aha! You want to know why? Because the old journalist mindset plus my own common sense says let's wait and see what the facts are before I offer an opinion." And that's been a good part of my development as a person and as a political uh, figure, I guess, is that I do think it's important to get the facts first. A lot of people have an emotional reaction to something they've been told by someone who actually may be trying to manipulate them. And I think all of us should kind of tap the brakes before we throw a fit or before we agree with something. Let's make sure we know what the facts are on the ground and we're able to deal with that. So um, I enjoyed television a lot because I do like people and getting out and about and meeting folks and having people tell me about their personal stories and what they're dealing with. That was positive. I had a little more anonymity in radio, but very little anonymity now in
For sure,
politics.
for sure, for sure.
People are telling me everything that's going on with them. One person said that the plumbing on their block was really bad, and I was like, "Well, I'm not sure that the lieutenant governor can do anything about that, but I'll try to figure that out."
Yeah. Yes, for sure. Going back to what you said earlier about the 24-hour news cycle, yeah, that's so hard to navigate when you're picking stories and writing stories and figuring out what you're going to talk about. I mean, the facts can change in an hour, in 30 minutes, right after you said it. And so that's also something really important to keep in mind. I watched a bunch of your interviews before this, and one of my favorite ones was with CBS 6's Untold podcast, and this
Oh
was
yeah.
from when before you were chosen as the nominee. Host Katie Beck brought up an interesting point about shifting your audience, going from a conservative, popular radio host with consistent and like-minded listenership to now a political candidate. How has your approach to garnering audience approval changed now that you're the nominee?
Well, I hope it hadn't changed fundamentally.
Mm-hmm.
I probably need to be cautious about some of the language that I use. Like, the old phrase, I don't know if people use it anymore, is like, we're in mixed company. It kind of used to be
Uh-huh.
like guy talk, and then the lady would enter the room, and the guys would kind of clean up their act and
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
not talk as crudely as they would amongst themselves. I'm not sure that today, that seems old fashioned today, perhaps. But when you're talking on conservative talk radio, I think the assumption is that most of the audience agrees with you, and so you can be emphatic and invalidating what everybody in the room already thinks is true. And in politics, the goal is to grow the public consensus and have people coalesce around the ideas you're presenting. And I think that requires a little more nuance, maybe a little softer approach than perhaps you have to use on talk radio. But that's kind of my personality too. I mean, look, I'm a Republican. I don't hide it from anybody. Everybody knows my personal story. Um, so I can be emphatic, and I do have strong opinions. But at heart, I'd love to figure out a way to get people to not just agree with me, but find the common points and the common ground so that maybe we can move things forward instead of this really ugly um, constant conflict that we're engaged in now. I think somehow we got to figure that out. And that's one reason I quit the radio shows. Maybe I'm one with my personal background and what I have dealt with in my life. Maybe I'm one of the people who can help achieve that. I hope springs eternal.
Yes, for sure, for sure. Do you think your campaign is presenting a good do you think your campaign is presenting a good view of Republican values to undecided voters and or Democrats who are looking to learn more about the Republican Party?
Well, I hope so. You look at this ticket, and it's very different from any ticket you've seen in the past. I mean, Winsome, obviously, if you meet Winsome, you know you're dealing with a black woman, a very strong, opinionated black woman. That doesn't intimidate me. That doesn't scare me. I respect Winsome. We don't agree on everything. That's become very clear. Okay, that's fine. I don't. I voted for my dad 9 times to be in the House of Delegates to represent me and everybody in Henrico County. I didn't agree with my own father,
Mm-hmm.
on every issue. We used to have really heated debates over the Sunday dinner table. We were an old-fashioned family and had those Sunday dinners. So, but you look at Winsome. She's from Jamaica. She is a black woman, um, Marine, so she's a female veteran. I think that is kind of shocking to some people. Like, oh my gosh, how did the Republicans pick a black woman to be the governor? Now, Republicans don't generally pick people based on which minority status box you can check.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the fact that Winsome was pretty good in the House of Delegates, that she's been a small business owner, I think that gave people confidence that she could do a good job. The fact that she's been pretty aggressive as lieutenant governor gave people confidence. Same thing you could say about Jason Miyares. He's an excellent attorney, did a good job in the House of Delegates, has been, I think, a very strong attorney general. Not hyper partisan, which I think is important. You need someone who adjudicates the law as the law is written, not kind of twisting it to do what you want it to do. And I think Jason's pretty grounded on that. And then I hope when people look at me, they'll see somebody who is a native Virginian, who has a deep appreciation for the state and the history and the heritage of the state, the best traditions of Virginia, who is, I'm an odd man out in the Republican Party as a gay guy. There's some people, I know there's some people who hate me because of that. Okay. I mean, look, what am I supposed to do about it? All I can do is try to be honest with everyone, tell you what I think. I think most conservatives will find that I'm tracking in large alignment with them. And some Democrat voters have told me that I'm the first Republican they've ever considered voting for. Now, we got a long way to go until November 4th, so I got to hold on to their vote. But I hope I'm able to express opinions that are palatable to them and in a way that will make them confident that I'll be reasonable, responsible, and fair if I'm the lieutenant governor. And that emphasis on fair is really important because some people don't care about that. They just want to win. And I think being fair when you're in one of these positions is really important.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. You talked a lot about your colleagues in the in office holders colleagues. 9th District Representative Morgan Griffith, who we actually had the pleasure of hosting a debate with last fall, he had said of your candidacy, quote, "I have this policy of always supporting the nominee. It's a basic philosophy of mine," unquote. Though not all office holders have expressed the same sentiments, how do the various levels of support from Republican colleagues impact your relationships with them while on the campaign trail?
Yeah. Well, I think everybody's kind of lining up behind the ticket now. Look, I've been around politics my entire life. I'm 54 years old now. I started handing out brochures on election day when I was 10, probably, in Henrico County. I've never seen a candidate that everybody just loves, that, they can do no wrong. I mean, it just doesn't happen. They love them afterwards if they accomplish something. Like Ronald Reagan. Most Republicans loved Ronald Reagan, but I was around when not everybody loved Ronald Reagan, and there was all this consternation. We'll see how everything goes with Trump, but there's a lot of consternation about Trump. At the end of his time as president, if he's able to solve the national debt crisis and deal with the immigration issue and get the economy back on track where people are fully employed and all the numbers are pointed in the right direction instead of the wrong direction, then they'll love Trump, right?
Yeah.
Some people won't, but there's always that kind of consternation. I recognize that I am an odd candidate for Republicans. I'm a different type of candidate, and it is taking the folks who didn't get to listen to me on radio, who didn't know my father, don't know me, don't know my family. It's taking them a while to go, now, who is this guy? He's suddenly our nominee. I understand that. It's frustrating, but I can't let it derail what I hope is the good spirit that I'm bringing to this race about representing everyone and being a positive force. You can get real bitter real fast in politics, and I'm trying not to let anything poison that with me as I run. And I think people are coming on board.
Yeah, yeah. Do you think those relationships would change if you were elected once in office, working with these office holders daily?
Oh, well, everything is. I think everybody's got a good attitude, and if the Republicans are successful at holding the governor's office and maybe winning back the House of Delegates, then I think it's like any team you've ever been on. You might not be in love with the person next to you on the team, but you know what your goal is, which is to achieve for the people who voted for you, to solve problems, to make things better so that you can ask for more political success in the future. And it doesn't mean that you're, getting married to everybody that you're in the room with. It just means that you're trying to accomplish similar goals. You're rowing in the same direction. And I think that's happening now, and I think it will happen. And I if I can brag about myself for a minute, I think I'm pretty good at forging those relationships, even where they don't exist at the moment. I'm trying to demonstrate that during the campaign because it has been rough. This campaign, there've been some really horrible things that have happened to me personally, and I'm trying to take the high road and rebuild and repair damage that other people did on behalf not just of my campaign, but for the Republican Party and for Virginia going forward.
Yeah, what changes have you had to make to navigate the onslaught of media attention? Like, did you have to do anything that surprised you that you would in this candidacy?
Well, I thought, I kind of knew it would be a rough road because I'm making history.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
and there are a lot of people, whenever that happens, there's scrutiny and there's some ugly people who aren't nice to you. um, but uh, in April it was pretty bad. It was really nasty, and it was very clear that there were some, I think, horrible things happening behind the scenes to try to harm me.
Mhm.
And I dealt with them directly in public. I don't want anybody to think that I'm a pushover, and I made that very clear. And I think the message got through. Don't you can disagree with me, totally fine. We can have a debate and an argument, totally fine. You come after me and try to do harm, especially with lies, and you've met an adversary like you've never seen before. And I was a little surprised that I had to demonstrate that and engage in that way, because I like being a nice guy. That's kind of where I am in general. But if you need somebody to be tough, and if you need somebody to make difficult decisions that may be unpopular or may hurt people's feelings, I can do that too.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really important for a candidate. Yeah, I know George Allen also came out in support of you after all of that media attention. I mean, I remember reading the story. It was front page of New York Times. I remember reading it right when it came out. We talked about it on our talk show for
Did you?
News.
Okay.
Yes, we talked about it briefly. I know you said George Allen, or I said George Allen came out in support of you. Do you think you're bringing any of those skills you learned, gained as a staffer for him when he was in the Senate into your campaign?
Yeah, it was a very interesting and trying time in the United States Senate. One of the things that I tell people regularly is I was there in 2004, sitting in the room with the other senior staffers in the U.S. Senate talking about immigration reform. What do we do?
Yeah.
Nobody had the political will to solve the immigration problem. That's 21 years ago. You kidding me? How is it 21 years later, it takes somebody like Donald Trump to come in and close the border, make everybody mad, upset everybody? But he's doing what we were talking about 21 years ago. And George Allen, who is a very practical person, was trying to carve out, like, all right, we're not going to agree on this element. We're not going to agree on. Can we find one element that we agree on? And we thought that it was closing the southern border, and they still wouldn't do it. I mean, Democrats and Republicans just couldn't agree to do it. I have suspicions that are very cynical about why. So I'm thankful that we finally closed the southern border. And I'll also tell you, people might find this interesting. When I worked for George Allen, like every big job I've ever had, there have been people who have attacked me and tried to get me fired because of the gay issue. It's stunning. And it hasn't been exclusively like right-wing Republicans. It has not been. It's been crazy. The left-wing Democrats who have come after me trying to attack me. That's kind of shocking. And it goes against that whole tolerance and, we're going to protect minorities. Yeah, you'll protect the minorities as long as they're on your side. And then as soon as they start to have an independent streak, you're more than willing to cut their throat. So when I started with George Allen, it was a presidential election year, 2004. And granted, President Bush, George W. Bush, was pushing the marriage amendment, which George Allen was not for, by the way. At that time, he was not for it. He said that we don't need to get into the changing the Constitution over this. And of course, I wasn't for it. I thought it was a terrible idea, but I was a staffer, not an elected official. So, you need to know your place. If you're that upset, then your only option is to leave. But I agreed with George Allen on it. Well, they tried to get me fired. The Democrats started posting stuff on the internet. It was awful, awful. And that prompted probably thousands of letters saying you have to fire this guy. And I hadn't done anything wrong. Nothing. I had done nothing wrong except show up to work every day and work like 14, 15-hour days, And George Allen said, I'm not firing you. You do a good job. You're solid. Don't let this distract you. I'm sorry that all this horrible stuff is happening. And I've always respected and appreciated that. Because it would have been better for him politically to get rid of me. Let's just be honest. Like, who needs this? This is an unnecessary problem. Like, get rid of this guy. But he didn't. He he stuck with me, and I've always been thankful for that.
Yeah, yeah. I wonder if you'll see that same loyalty if elected in office in November. I think that would be really powerful to feel that
Yeah.
same loyalty to your Republican office holders. All right.
Well, it'll be a challenge because
Yeah.
there's some issues coming up where, hopefully we'll agree on most things, and hopefully I'll be able to add a perspective that perhaps they don't appreciate. And I'll also be able to show how you can win by expanding the group of people who want to be with you. Doesn't mean you're giving up on your values. It
Mhm.
means that you're recognizing we live in a state with 8.5 million people who don't agree on everything. And here's my general rule. And it's not that I came up with this. I think Thomas Jefferson talked about it. If you allow other people to live their lives as they see fit, as long as they're not taking your money or impugning your reputation or, you know, uh, uh, trespassing on your property or changing the entire nature of the place that you're living, then fine. And I think that's the only way that this works going forward is to carve out space. Like there are people who are mad at me because I've said I won't vote for the gay marriage amendment to the Virginia Constitution that the Democrats have written. Well, you know why I can't do it? It's not that I'm against gay marriage, it's that I think we've got to protect the rights of religious people who do not support gay marriage, that they're not going to get treated like second class citizens. Oh, you don't support gay marriage, so now you can't have your church here. You can't have a government contract, or this funding that once was available for you to take care of the poor, we're not going to give it to. No, it hurts my feelings that some people are hostile to me, but if I want to live in a free country, then I need to come up with a way to let people be free, even if I don't agree with them. And you're just not going to hear that from most American politicians these days. They want you to submit to what they believe. I'd love it if you came along to my way of thinking, but I don't have any need to stomp on you or subjugate you to second class citizenship status. That's exactly what I'm trying to stop from having happen.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. When talking about the gay marriage amendment to the U.S. or excuse me, Virginia Constitution, would you say that you could say the same thing about gay individuals in Virginia trying to get married? That you're maybe protecting them under this amendment? You said you specifically would not want
Oh,
to vote for that amendment.
well, I mean, it's kind of a moot point right now, and I suspect it will stay this way. The Supreme Court has said that gay marriage is legal, and so whether you love it or you hate it, I mean, it doesn't matter what every individual thinks at the moment because the court has made the judgment that it's made. I know there's a big discussion about whether the court would change that status with the future case. I think that's unlikely. I've talked to some people who are very sensitive to this issue on both sides, and I think both sides think that it's unlikely that that would change. And that's why I think this amendment in the Virginia Constitution is premature. I don't think you go around changing the Constitution in anticipation of a Supreme Court ruling that may or may not come, and then you don't know what it says, especially when I mean, can we be honest? The two fundamentals are, can gay couples get married? And can religious individuals who deeply disagree with that, can they continue to be full citizens in society? And how do we navigate that going forward? So I think this is premature. But I've told people, I said, look, you don't have to bake a special wedding cake. If you're a baker or you're a florist, you don't have to bake a special wedding cake.
Yeah, I do
Like
remember that
I have
case
some friends in
specifically.
Lynchburg
Hmm.
who can't stand right-wing conservatives. I mean, for some reason they get along with me okay, but I know they would not they would not take a contract to do like Jerry Falwell's flowers at his old house or the Falwell family, right? They just wouldn't do it. Okay. I mean, that you'll probably offend the Falwell family and a lot of people who like them if you say no. But if you're asking for some special service, then I think that is something that you can opt out of. if you're selling flowers and you say, no, I don't like you and I don't like you and you can't buy these flowers and they're on sale, pardon me, in front of everybody, then that's a different situation. And I'm puzzled why so many people really don't want to deal with the nuance there. It's an important distinction if we do want to have a free society, and I'd like to protect that.
Okay, yeah, yeah, thank you. I'd like to move kind of into your specific campaign materials, what you're promoting. You frequently use the phrase "Real Virginia Agenda" across social media, press releases, campaign
Yeah.
materials. Could you define the Real Virginia Agenda for our listeners who are unfamiliar?
Yeah, there are a lot of people in Virginia who think that Northern Virginia is filled with rich people and that other parts of the state are filled with welfare recipients and other parts of the state. I don't think that. I think that everybody can find some common values that should be the driving principles upon which we base our public policy decisions and our ideas. And so if you go to the Reid Revolution Substack, which talks about the Real Virginia Agenda, you'll see that I've tried to come up with really practical solutions to problems that I think are widespread in a lot of different regions with a lot of different people. We're not just trying to tackle things that one group of people have to deal with. And I knew that phrase would garner some attention. And you know, perhaps already in this interview, you recognize one of the things I am really trying to do is find commonality
Mhm, yeah.
with different types of people. So the Real Virginia Agenda is about that, finding commonality with different types of people in different regions who have different circumstances, but probably face similar challenges.
Yeah, specifically, I actually have something about housing I'd like to ask you. So, you announced this, I believe it was last
3 weeks ago.
Thursday.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, you
Oh, well.
announced a new pillar of the Virginia agenda, where first-time homebuyers would receive a 25,000 tax credit, and counties would be given more tools and flexibility to expand housing. How would this plan specifically support college towns like Blacksburg's that have a hard time balancing student populations with long-term residents? I mean,
Yeah,
we're seeing
it is a
lots of housing
challenge.
issues here. Yeah.
This is a challenge everywhere, but I imagine that in towns that have a large student population that comes in and leaves on a regular basis,
Mhm.
that's difficult. And for the folks who were, I don't want to say stuck, but the folks who were, they're living there 12 months a year, and
Mhm.
it's not necessarily based on the college calendar. That is a challenge. I've talked to a bunch of developers, um, knowing that developers want to make money. So
Mhm.
I always, like what's this person's interest in talking to me and telling me their story. And then I've talked to a number of people on different boards of supervisors across the state. I've also and some in some counties that have been pretty successful at keeping up with this, and other counties that are just and cities that are a disaster. Like, I mean, I hate to say it, Richmond's my hometown. I'm always cheering for Richmond, but Richmond's got some problems. The developers and the construction people that I have grown to know over the last several years have told me they're just pulling a permit in Richmond is not easy, to
Mhm.
be polite. And so here you have a major city like Richmond, different from Blacksburg, but maybe some similar issues that you got to deal with. If you can't pull the permits fast, if you can't get things approved fast, if you're tied up in court, if it cost you 100 grand from the start of the project, and that's probably a low estimate for lawyers and advisors and fixers. Oh my God, let's not go into the fixer thing. I lived overseas, and fixers are a big deal. And it can add, well, in the United States, it can add a couple 100 grand. But can I just tell you, when I was overseas, we had projects that I was tangentially involved with. Thank God I wasn't fully responsible for them from start to finish. Um, I mean, millions of dollars would go to fixers.
Mhm.
And you know what that meant? You give me money, and then I go talk to this person, and I work out the issue. I give them, I mean, we cannot allow this society to deteriorate to that point. I don't think it's that bad here. And I used to be an investigative reporter, so I snoop around to try to find out what's going on behind the scenes. Um, but I think we are in danger of that kind of thing happening. We've got to hold the line not to let it happen. So, short answer. I've given you a long answer. Short answer is make the permits easier to pull, cut some of the red tape. I'm an environmentalist guy to the extent that I have been, an Eagle Scout. Unless you were in the Army or the Marines, I probably camped out more than most people, in society by the modern standards. So I have a real appreciation for the natural environment in Virginia. I want to protect that, but we also need to balance that with the need for new construction. I'd also like to see, and I haven't really talked about this much on the campaign trail. I would hope that some of these cities that are run by Democrats generally would find it appealing if I could come up with a way to help them repurpose some land that has sat in a degenerative state for a decade or more. You know, I haven't spent as much time wandering around Blacksburg as I have Richmond, but there are entire sections that are just locked up because nobody will build on them. And maybe an EPA violation that needs to be dealt with. And I think that density in the downtown areas, if you're living in the city, you know what you're getting into, right? You expect density. That would be wise for us to encourage that in the downtown areas with the amenities and the grocery stores and everything that people expect so they can live their lives, instead of just the gangrene that stretches endlessly into the suburbs and just chews up the property. But I think we'll need to get some people who are thoughtful about it in a room, talk through the tax implications and the practical applications on the ground, and see if we can't come up with a solution to that. I'm excited about it, though.
Yeah. I think specifically in Blacksburg and a lot of smaller college towns across Virginia, you talked a lot about your $25,000 tax credit for first-time home buyers.
Yes.
Students,
For the
obviously,
buyer.
for the
Okay.
buyers, of course. Students are not buying houses, of course. Living in rent-controlled areas, and I think what happens a lot of the time is Blacksburg residents who are not students, who are not involved in the university, fall into that same rent trap. So how specifically would this tax credit benefit people who are trying to get out of that rent trap, who are trying to buy for their first time, buy a house?
Oh, well, I mean, starting with $25,000 off the top, I think is a pretty good start, right? And I'll be honest with you, I've had people already call me and tell me, oh, that's crazy, we're not going to go along with that. And I'm like, well, tell that to the voters, because that's what I'm proposing. You want to tell them that you're going to offer a smaller credit? You better come up with a number, because I think that actually will kind of even the playing field. I think the president is likely to get some sort of interest rate cut in the near future, and I think that's going to really ignite the market again. But you can't help the market just with an interest rate cut if there's not inventory available for people to purchase. So this was the first idea that I thought was a practical idea to take some of the financial burden away from somebody who's in their 20s or early 30s, who's been renting, maybe traveling around a lot, and wants to actually settle down and buy a piece of property. But it's limited. It's the first time you do it, so it can't be somebody who's just doing investment property material. It's the first effort, and there may be other strings that people come up with that will kind of fine tune it so that it's not abused with people going forward. But the inventory is a problem. I don't want to speak to Blacksburg and say something that's not true, because I don't know. But in a lot of these towns that I've been to, nobody's building. And I think it's because we've made it so expensive to start out the construction project that a lot of the developers look and they go, unless I can sell, 100 units, it's not worth my time. And so part of that proposal, if people want to go look at it, was to make it feasible financially and otherwise for these developers to say, okay, here's an existing building, it's a warehouse, we can reconvert that and use the infrastructure that's already there, the structure and the infrastructure that's already there, to create livable projects.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. All right, thank you. I would like to move on to some questions about education. I know that's a big pillar, a big part of your campaign, and a part of the Republican ticket in general this year. So your website claims, quote, John Reid believes we should prioritize first-class learning in education, free from leftist indoctrination. His focus is on ensuring that our educational system imparts knowledge and critical thinking skills, not political bias, preparing students for success in a diverse world instead of creating radical activists, unquote. Do you see higher education in Virginia in the same light?
Yeah, I think we got a problem on a lot of these campuses, and I don't think it's easily solvable. I think there needs to be an attitude check with some of the administrators. I've got some wonderful friends who have gone into higher education, and I've watched their philosophy metamorphosize over the decades since we were in college together. I don't dislike them, I'm not mad at them, but it has been very interesting to see how, in order to succeed, I've actually had some people tell me this, hey, in order to succeed, if I want to be the vice president of whatever on any college campus in America, maybe except what, Liberty and Hillsdale, right? Those are the two you don't have to go along with the general consensus within the educational community. Then I have to minimally tip my hat to these leftist policies, if not fully embrace them. And yeah, I think the public is not very pleased with the end result of a lot of the folks who are matriculating through the system. I won't beat up on colleges at this moment, but I'll tell you, as someone who has employed and hired a lot of people over the last decade, the fundamentals of being able to read, write, critical thinking without emotion. I can get emotional. If you want me to get emotional, I can get, but I have been conditioned to check my emotions, especially when important decisions need to be made. And I'm finding that that's something that's missing. And as I have examined it, and I don't have kids in the schools. Everybody knows that. They try to beat up on me like, what, you think I live in, I mean, you think I live not exposed? My niece and my nephew just started school last year and this year. I mean,
Yeah, I've never
I'm
understood
hearing,
that argument of
yeah,
people saying you
yeah.
don't have kids in school.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but it's one thing if I live out on a yacht in the Mediterranean or something and I'm not involved in the community, but I'm pretty involved in the community.
Mhm.
I think we have lost sight of the fundamentals of education, especially K through 12. What are those? The ability in English, the main language of the United States for the moment, to be able to pick up any book, any magazine, any publication, any graffiti, any place that you have to communicate and understand what somebody's saying, to elevate the vocabulary that individuals use, and then to teach critical thinking skills. And instead of that, I think we're dumbing this stuff down. And I can tell you, my interaction with a lot of folks, and I never want to insult somebody, but people have to ask themselves whether I'm talking about them and their friends or not. If you are upset about something, are you still capable of putting aside the emotions and trying to objectively analyze what's in front of you and the argument, the counter argument that's being made to what you find yourself thinking? Can you analyze that objectively? And I don't think that's being taught. Now, when it comes to the leftist indoctrination, and I do use that phrase frequently, and I wish it was just bombast on my part. I don't think it is. You can tell the story of your family, right? Everybody's got somebody in the family who's a screw up, somebody who's done something wrong. I don't know. Maybe they went bankrupt. That's not the worst thing in the world. Or maybe they did something off and they wound up in prison. I don't know. There's always some person in the family who's a mess up. Could be a divorce, an ugly divorce. The dad cheated on the wife or vice versa. I don't know. You can still share the family history with the children in the family and be basically truthful about what happened without making them hate everybody in the family. without having them say, oh, to hell with this, I'm going to walk away. I don't want to have anything to do with you people anymore. And that's an important skill that adults learn to do. I need to be able to tell you the truth without poisoning the well. And I think we're missing that when it comes to telling our own story as a culture, as a state, as a nation, as a society. I think there are those people, it's not everybody, but I think there are people who are telling the story of Virginia and telling the story of America with the goal of poisoning the minds of the next generation. Why would they do that? Good question. I think they want to gain political control and tear down the structure of the country as it currently exists. If you can discredit Thomas Jefferson by making such a ridiculous false claim like Thomas Jefferson is a rapist. I mean, most people think Thomas Jefferson is a rapist. Then when you actually start digging around, you're like, it doesn't seem like it's likely that he was the one that did that. It seems like somebody in the family was messing around inappropriately and immorally with enslaved people. I mean, I find that repulsive. But there's a reason they're going after Thomas Jefferson, because they want to discredit his writings as one of the founding fathers. And let the truth be the truth, but can we actually try to find the truth instead of poisoning the well? And I want to call out the people who I think very cynically are trying to manipulate people to take over the society. I'm going to stand in the way of that.
Okay, yeah. What specific changes do you think in Virginia's education system could stop this, in your own words, poisoning of the well? How does this translate to Virginia? Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you two things. One is about the curriculum. I think the curriculum is not focused on the basics of reading and writing and arithmetic. I mean, it's odd. We're such a sophisticated society today, and yet most people can't make change. Now, do you have to make change where people are slapping their credit card down? No. But it means that the skills, the mind skills and the mathematical skills that are necessary to make change, which probably the average person who didn't even go to high school could have done. I'm 54, so let's just go back to when I was 10. I think the average person, you didn't have to graduate from high school to have that skill set. Now, I don't know. You tell me. I don't think most people, certainly who haven't graduated from high school, that's a skill set that they've got. And that puts you at a disadvantage, not only in a practical sense, but with the mind skills that are necessary to advance yourself and society. That's a little thing, but the cumulative effect of it in society, I think, is negative. As I mentioned, I do think we need to look at the curriculum and what we're teaching. Are we focusing on negatives, or are we focusing on the achievements of Virginia and Virginians? Telling the whole story about them. I mean, they're great Virginians who were probably deliberately excluded. I mean, look at me. There are people who don't even want to acknowledge the history that I'm making at the moment as a political candidate. I don't know if I'm going to win or not. I'm going to do my best to win, but I would not approve of someone erasing me from history. Success, whether I'm successful or not successful. I would not approve of someone erasing someone like Doug Wilder, the first black governor in modern America. We should be proud that Doug Wilder fought like heck to wind up as lieutenant governor, to be in the Senate, to be lieutenant governor, to be governor. I think that's something that the society should be proud of. So I'm not in favor of eliminating or erasing people, and I see that beginning, like the folks who tore down the statues on Monument Avenue in Richmond. That wasn't an intellectual pursuit. We didn't take a vote and say, we don't approve of these people anymore. Now, I wouldn't vote for that, but at least that would have been a reasonable way to deal with it. Instead, I'm asserting that there are people who truly want to erase certain people that they don't like. Like, you hate Robert E. Lee. Well, I don't know. Robert E. Lee was pretty widely esteemed for many, 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 many years, many decades, and it wasn't just white supremacists and Confederates who loved him. There were a lot of people who found things to be very positive about Robert E. Lee. I understand the slavery issue. I'm pretty fully versed on the Civil War, but there's been a concerted effort in recent years to erase people and to do damage to the demonstrable landmarks about the history of this area. And that mindset, I think, is anti intellectual. It's certainly anti preservationist. And as somebody who's traveled around the world, I've been to 113 different countries. What's the first thing I do? I go to the National Museum or the State Museum to see the relics of previous governments and society, sometimes brought over from other parts of the world. We're doing to ourselves what the docents at those museums would lament. Like, oh, I wish you could see this. It used to be such an amazing statue, but we have this one little fragment that we can show you. Why? Because an angry mob did what we allowed the angry mob to do in 2020, which is tear things down. We shouldn't do that. And it is one of the motivating factors for me to run for lieutenant governor. I got to stop that attitude. You don't have to bow down to any statue or love anybody. I'm not a big fan of Harry Byrd. But I thought it was wrong for the Democrats to take Harry Byrd out of Capitol Square. There's an important story to tell from his time as the leader of Virginia. Doesn't mean I worship him or anything. It just means we need to understand that very significant and long period in our history. And we're missing that in the educational environment. And then I know I'm running on too long about this, but I'll just tell you one thing that's really made some people mad, which surprised me. I think discipline in the public school system is huge problem. I hear it from my friends who have been school teachers. They didn't get into it to get rich. They got into it because they love kids, they love education. It was a good career for them. They are out because the threats, the physical threats and the vulgarity in the classroom is out of control. So what do you do about that? I think you get the school resource officers back in the school. That was another stupid mistake that was made in 2020. Everybody reacting to Minneapolis, Minnesota, getting rid of school resource officers in the school. Bad mistake. I think you put these kids in uniforms, which cuts down on the expense to the parents. It stops the fashion shows that go on, where one person has a rich family and they spend money on this, but then somebody else doesn't have the money. They can't afford the $300 sneakers or whatever. Takes that out. It says to the kids, we're back to being disciplined here. If you want to show off how great you are, then you have to show it with grades and you have to be able to articulate an opinion. You have to have a talent on the sports field or be able to play the trumpet or the violin or be a great singer. We're not going to let you replace real talent with this artificiality that much of our society accepts. And I think that mindset change right out of the box would help us regain control of the discipline of the classrooms. We're spending $21 billion in this 2-year period on the public schools. $21 billion. That's double what we were spending 5 years ago. And everybody's trying to tell me we need to spend more money. You need discipline in the classroom is what you need. And my dad was a principal. My mom was a school teacher. I don't even go to these high schools anymore because most of them are not a good experience. I'm just telling you, that's what needs to happen, and I'm gonna push it.
Okay, yeah, for sure. I mean, I went to public school in Virginia since I was in kindergarten.
What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree that discipline is a big issue. My relative, my aunt, she was a public school teacher in Tennessee for a long time, but she had to switch to a private school because of the discipline issue. So I definitely think it is a huge issue. I think it's interesting how both sides want to tackle what the Democrats and what the Republicans think about what's the best way to tackle this issue. Because I don't know the best issue.
I'd love for them to get on board with me on this.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's tough because I think part of the Republican interface when it comes to education, a lot of it is about religion too. Some people talk about wanting the 10 Commandments in the classroom, wanting that's a way to include discipline. And I think a lot of Democrats and a lot of people who aren't necessarily religious are really against that, and so therefore they're really against the Republicans model an idea of what they want in schools and what they want in their education system. So I think, what do you think about that? The Ten Commandments in the classroom. I believe Louisiana was just implemented that in some of their schools. What do you think about that for Virginia?
Yeah. Has anybody improved on the Ten Commandments? And the only thing that I can think of that a non-religious believer would object to about the Ten Commandments is honoring God, keeping God at the center of your existence, and not what keeping the Sabbath holy. But the general thought process, the general rules of the Ten Commandments are things that I would think that everyone would agree with.
Mm-hmm.
And so it has always been troubling to me that there are people who are so anti-religion that they would deny the good teachings of religion from being shared with folks. It's not lost on me. There are people who are condemning me. I mean, I've had people walk right up to my face and say, "You are an abomination worthy of death, but I'm not going to kill you." Oh, really? Hey, thanks. Thanks for sparing my life. You might want to check the Ten Commandments because it's not really your place to kill me just because you dislike me. I mean, it's been stunning, some of the things that have been said to me. So I understand that we don't want to turn ourselves over to some theocracy where people feel empowered to treat people poorly. I mean, it is I've spent this past weekend going to a lot of different houses of worship. I was in the mosques in Northern Virginia. I mean, here I am with my situation in a mosque speaking to people of faith, not a faith that is a part of my existence, but I've lived around the world and I know that they're good people in every faith, and I need to try to seek them out and find common ground with them where I can, especially if I want to be a statewide political leader in a state that's as diverse as Virginia. And I'm just not going to shut people down, but there are lessons to be learned here, and I would hate for anybody to be so anti-religion that they would then throw out the lessons of the last 2,000 years of human history, which might be good to take a look at as we structure ourselves.
Okay. Yeah. 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 Do you think that would make certain individuals in the classroom feel excluded because they are not following, or because their families don't follow that certain religion that are associated with the Ten Commandments in a classroom? I know this is a very specific issue we're talking
Yeah.
about, but I think it talks more about the broader aspects of what should be in the classroom and what shouldn't be.
Well, this is one reason. You've stumbled upon the reason that school choice is so important,
Mm-hmm.
because there's some people who would not have any problem with a comparative religion class, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, let's look for the good within the Buddhist religion. Let's
And,
look
and
for the
just to be
good.
clear, you're talking about in public schools in Virginia, K through 12. That's what you're talking about. Maybe.
Yeah, well, I mean, you brought up, should we hang the Ten Commandments on the wall?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think most people in Virginia would probably say the Ten Commandments are affirmative and positive. That's not a negative influence. I think
Okay.
most
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
would agree with that, but there would be a small group of people who would absolutely be offended
Mm-hmm.
by what they would consider to be a religious indoctrination. So the only way I think we survive going forward is we give people options. If you are a Bible believing family
Mm-hmm.
and some of the things that are happening in the public schools deeply offend you, and you look and you say, you know what? I don't think my kids are getting a good education. They're certainly not learning the values that I want them to be, excuse me, instructed in. Then it seems to me you should be able to pull your kid out of the government schools and find a school that would match. And since you're paying tax money,
Mm-hmm.
and we have agreed that every kid deserves an education, I think you should be able to take some of that money to supplement the school that best approximates how you'd like for them to be educated. And that's not just Bible believing Christian conservatives. That's other people too who might want to send their kid to a different type of school. Pardon me.
I
Sorry,
know
this
we've been
coffee's
talking for
got
so
me.
long. Yeah.
Yeah,
I know
sorry about that.
that specifically is was a big part of Glenn Youngkin's candidacy, or not candidacy, his time in
Well,
office.
it's weird. It's weird how hostile people are to that idea. I mean, the whole idea of choice, I think, is something that people generally like.
Mhm.
I got 15 different types of sodas I can get at the 7-Eleven when I go in. I've got 10 different types of bread that I can get. I mean, those are simplistic examples, but why would you not want to in a society that is no longer monolithic?
Mhm.
I mean, I guess you could make the argument that 100 years ago, Virginia was much more monolithic than it is today. Why would you not want to provide people with those opportunities? And it's more than just the theology, it's whether the school's delivering. I mean, you get a kid, you got 12 years to educate them, right? From kindergarten to 12th grade, 13 years. You got 13 years to educate them. You don't have any time to lose. We
Mhm.
found that out during COVID. You take the kid out and just kind of leave them to their own devices, you're going to lose out on opportunities. You can't do that.
Mhm.
So why not, if we found that the school system isn't delivering, and in some places it is not, it's not even debatable, the kids are not learning, then why don't we come up with a solution that immediately changes the calibration and the equation and lets parents get the kids in quick so that they can learn? I think that's probably a pretty smart thing to do rather than doubling and tripling down on a system that doesn't seem to be functioning as well as we'd like for it to.
Okay, yeah, yeah. I appreciate this open discussion we've had about that topic. I mean, it's a huge issue in this
Yeah.
ticket, and for Democrats and Republicans, especially in this race. And I really do think time will tell how those changes will, if they will be implemented, and what that class of students will look like what my
I
generation
hope we can.
in
I hope we
in
just
10,
give the kids a chance.
yeah, yeah.
Let's. One of the problems, and I see you're running out of time, so I don't want to take up too much time on this. But Winsome Sears pushed for school choice, and they
Mhm,
didn't even barely give her a hearing on it. I
mhm.
mean, what's that all about? Can we not acknowledge we have a problem? I mean, can we all be honest with each other? We got a problem. Not in every school, not with every kid, but this is not working in the modern era the way we would all like for it to.
Mhm.
And, you know, I tell people about my family being involved in public education because I don't want them to think that I'm just beating up on the teachers or being
Yeah,
nasty.
yeah.
That is not my motivation. My motivation is to acknowledge there's a problem and let's come up with a solution that'll work for the most people. And for a lot of those people, it'll be to stay in the good public school that they've got down the street. They'll be happy about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Glad we got to go over that. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
um, if so, I'm going to switch gears. Kind of closing. We're about to finish with our interview. If elected, what would you want to be remembered by from your time in office?
Hmm. The same thing that I'm campaigning on. I know that I will make people angry.
Mhm.
I know that I will touch issues that other people are scared to touch
Mhm.
and discuss. I've lived my life that way, and that's okay with me. But in the end, even the people who may not like the decisions that I would make or may disagree with me sincerely,
Mhm.
I would like for them to think that John Reid approached this job in a reasonable way, in a responsible way, and he listened to other people and tried to be fair.
Mhm.
That's very important to me. As a man, as a neighbor, in my relationship, that's important to me. And if I'm fortunate enough to be chosen as a lieutenant governor, that will be how I will try to present myself and function in this role. I think that's really important, and I think you should ask that from everybody
Mhm.
who's running for office.
For sure. definitely agree with that. Awesome. I'm so glad I got to speak with you today. This was
Oh, well, thanks for the time.
Yes,
I
of course,
appreciate it.
of course.
Everybody back in school already? Or they?
Yes, we just had our first week of classes. I have class right after this, actually.
Okay, that's why you really got to go. All
Yes,
right.
I do. But thank you so much for speaking with us. This has been WUVT News's talk show, Tech Talk. This is our first guest of the semester. A pretty big guest, actually. So our follow-up guests might be a little intimidated, but thank you so much for joining us. I really do appreciate it.
Glad to talk to you.
Yes, thank you so much.